So this is an artist talk, but also I think I have to talk about my life because they go together. I was born in Mexico and raised in Mexico City. My family history, I have important people in politics or artists or from both sides of my family. From my father's side, well, my father is an amazing architect. So the brothers of my grandmother fought next to Pancho Villa during the Mexican Revolution. They were called Los Dorados, and they were very courageous and really fought during the revolution. And my grandmother had a very interesting life. Okay, she was from Chihuahua, and his father was a merchant. So sometimes they traveled in a carriage to deliver the goods and person very important, which is my aunt Amalia, which she was a dancer and choreographer. And she started her small school despite my grandfather didn't want her to be a dancer. And she was so strong-minded that she ended creating the Ballet Folclórico de Mexico, which is known. In my mother's side, my great-grandfather was president of Mexico during the period of 24 and
23 to 29.
Ah, good. Okay. And he created the PRI, which is a Partido Revolucionario Institucional, which is a party that was in power for many presidencies. And unfortunately, this party has crumbled because of wrong use of power or wrong use of finances and corruption. And so now there are other parties that are taking over. What else? My grandmother was also a very important figure in my life. When she was on her 20s is when her father was president of Mexico, and she got to live in a castle, El Castillo de Chapultepec, which is a castle. And it was like the White House, that type of thing. And she was a very strong woman, and she was one of the first probably women's lib, because she started on the 20s. She cut her hair short, she started wearing pants, smoking in public, and she was like a very attractive woman. And her sisters also, they make history. They even said that their father as president could control the country, but not his daughters. So I want to talk about awakening to the interest of art. I've been a self-taught artist since I started in the 60s, late 60s. But as I grew up with my father being an architect, he was always talking about art. He was very attracted and loved the pre-Hispanic culture, and so we visited with him all the beautiful sites, the pyramids. And even he used to take us to dig. Now you cannot do it, it's forbidden, but to dig out and find little pebbles and pieces of pottery, antique pottery. But the greatest find was, you find that obsidian arrow, which is a rock that shines. That obsidian, in Hispanic times, they used to polish it so much and so well that it was the mirror of Quetzalcoatl. It was really one of the stones that was prominent and very. My mother also gave me a very close and direct approach to love color, love art. I didn't live with her, so it was the time I spent with her was very magic and very special. And she always enticed me to paint and draw, and had always things for me to do. And it was a way I started communicating with my mother very, very close, which was very nice. I also, through her, I met, well, as a child, I was 7, 8, Luis Barragan, which is a very well-known Mexican architect as well. And he used to give me money to go and buy Crayolas and colors. So those things were super important in my life. He was very interested. She wanted to be an actress, and took some lessons with a very important Japanese theater director. His name is Seki Sano. He had a school and many followers. Many of actors in Mexico went with him. And I was so pretty. Beautiful cup that is already gone through years. It's even broken. It's a present from him to my mom, and I kept it. And I have it. It has traveled with me everywhere. Yes, it's my favorite painting there. Yeah. So, well, in my teenage years is when I had to decide what to do with my life. I went to public schools, which was not normal. You know, like nice girls go to private schools. But my father wanted me to go to the school where he went, which was interesting. So I grew up, I had more diversity in my education, made very good friends there. I went to take some classes with Robin Bond, which is he must have been gone already, that he used his British in a school called Summerhill, which was very famous in the 60s, 70s, even around the world. People knew about Summerhill because it was like an utopia. Like they let the kids be totally free. They will participate in decisions of the school. And mostly he was an artist, so he taught art. And it was the best thing ever. So I started taking drawing lessons, and then I saw him working in the workshop with kids, and I switched. I said, asked him if I could help him. And when I saw these drawings of these kids and the things they were doing, is when I felt that, you know, the kids are so pure. What they do is so admirable. And that is my only exposure to classes. My grandmother insisted I should go to study interior design, but I think it was a great idea. But at that time, girls have to be educated to be a mom and to be a housewife. Even if my grandmother was very modern in that respect towards education. But then I decided to study literature. I went to university and for 1 year, and then I dropped out because I got married. And then we went to live in Paris, and then is where my school started, in Paris. I started painting. I decided, well, I want to paint. But with any direction, I just bought the canvas and 2 brushes, some primary colors, and I start practicing painting things that I see or copying illustrations of Toulouse-Lautrec by myself, no? So the things I did faded, of of course, because I use a lot of turpentine, like if it was a watercolor.
Oh.
So, and then when I went back to Mexico, settled down in Mexico City, I had my own studio, and I got an easel, and I started working. And I had one little painting that I was going to bring in and I forgot, but it was the beginning of my style. So I had a mentor, an artist, Ricardo Martinez, a Mexican amazing artist. He didn't teach me any technique, but just to see his work, I learned a lot, and I owe him a lot. He asked me if he wanted to see my work. I said, why don't you bring it to my studio? So I brought my little canvases that he's all embarrassed. And he looked at them, and then he said, Anamario, I think, do you know Giorgio Morandi? And I said, no. He says, wait a minute. So he went, brought a calendar, and the calendar was of Giorgio Morandi. And he says, you see, you use the same compositions, you use the same colors, like they're very like soft, and mostly the composition. And I said, and the objects, I have this, I love that. And then I went home kind of scared and said, I'm not going to start copying Giorgio Morandi. So I didn't have a book, or later on life I discovered some more of his art. But that was in the beginning of my career. So everything is experimentation in my case. One anecdote that is interesting because it defines me. My first painting is a little table, had a little vase like this with the, how you call this, the wheat twig. And I wanted to paint the twig. And I started trying to make a straight line, nada, no, couldn't. So had long hair, grabbed pocket piece of hair, put it on, passing by the oil, okay, like that, then placing it on top of the painting and carefully going down. Bingo. That was a great discovery. But like that is like my father said, always respecting of the process of creation. When you are creating something, that you are searching and trying to find a way, and suddenly there is this hallazgo, we call it, which is the finding or discovering something. Hallazgo is a better word than discovering. But it's when you have the bingo, this is it. And he's always told me, you have to look for that moment of hallazgo, and it's what he does. His architecture doesn't repeat itself. He has been an architect for so many years, and his architecture doesn't resemble to one another. It's incredible. I would say that for me, being self-taught, now I feel very happy and proud of it, because it's a very slow process, but also you have the opportunity to develop your own style. You don't follow your partners or your teacher or some style or fashion or trend, but just focus on the search of expressing myself. And something that I feel about Giorgio Morandi is that he expresses almost like an explosion of silence. His silence talks, and I think it's something I always want to achieve. I just wanted to talk about symbolism, because all these pieces have symbolism. You know, the top is the childhood, and even this is from my childhood, it's so old. This little thing is for good luck, but as a kid I used to play with it a lot, like rubbing it in the ground and then play with my brothers and burn yourself. It burns yourself. Then the rocks, and a rock, like all the memory, the tactile memory, and touching an object, and you can feel it, and even you don't have to copy it. You can just go straight to the canvas and paint it. And the beautiful, adorable, I love my plum box. I have a collection. It's also is a grounding more than anything. It's gravity, it's balance. It represents a lot. Some people say that my elements are very phallic. And somebody mentioned, well, maybe she had this complex of castration like the girls have when they're little kids. And I said, well, maybe. But I love it.
Some women do.
And this is sand, which I love. The ocean is also part of my childhood. And it really is my essence. And this last one. Yeah.
I want to know about that.
Yeah, this to me represents love. This is a seed that if you take care of it, put it in water, it will be fertile, it will grow a plant. But if this beautiful seed that is spiky and everything, but if it's like love, if you want to hold it tight, keep it. It hurts. You have to let go. That's my motto. And this guy who is filming showed me that love is to let the person be themselves, to have the freedom to be what they want to be, and that is love. And I want to thank Richard for all your support. You've been great. Every exhibit is really crazy, but he's very patient with me, and I think he has been my companion. I'm so lucky because when I came to live to Washington and then I got divorced, I met this guy. And even my painting changed. My friend says, Anamario used to paint dark, somber paintings that they were receding. Everything was like mysterious and hidden. And suddenly I started painting windows, and even I opened windows, and more color, and because I was happier. And I'm still very happy. And this is it.
Who is your favorite artist?
Well, I love Chardin, I love Vuillard. I don't want to leave anyone, so I look at my list. I love Vermeer, of course. I love Rembrandt. I love Goya. I love Balthus. I love Hockney, Rothko. Those are my friends.
I think your paintings have, being that your father is an architect, there's definitely some architectural dimension.
You know, I made, with this painting, I got the dimensions, measured it, because actually it was not this one. It was another one that I did as big as this. And I make my composition by intuition, not knowing perspective. So I draw it in a sheet and then put it in the wall, took a photograph, sent it to my dad and said, Dad, please can you tell me the perspective is good? Right? And then he made some corrections and it worked.
I mean, like the floor on this one, and it's just so perfect.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
It's golden triangles within golden triangles. I think it's very pleasing to the eye, and then you have the aqueducts sort of in the background.
Well, this painting is kind of describes life, you know, the beginning. The aqueduct is the artery of the earth, brings water and life, and you know, it's starting getting dry, and it's like a cycle of life. 5 or 6 layers of oil. And this is more soft. I start building, you know, for example, this is no texture. And here I start working a few layers and I use the brush very like in the side and start grabbing, you know, the texture of the linen. That's why I'm always very proud of and happy to use Belgian linen.
Textures.
Absolutely.
Somebody asked me
Doesn't have
if the Belgian linen
the Belgian linen is the best.
was, you know,
Yeah.
made that texture. I said, I think it's pink Delta on it.
Yeah, it's layers and layers and layers. Linen. It was so expensive. I say, imagine how much I spent in this linen.
I think my favorite is the baseball.
Yes.
That baseball for eternity is going to be staying there and waiting. It's aloft. And it's,
Well, I have a phrase of Marcel Proust, which also is my inspiration, and he's a describer of situations, moments, and I admire him a lot. So I started looking for a quotes like, this is beautiful. Only through art can we get outside ourselves and know another's view of the universe, which is not the same as ours. So that's ready to answer. If you're tired, we can.
I have a question.
Okay.
I thought about this, and I should have asked you years ago. You did a painting, and it also became the title of your exhibit, that was called "Where Does the Silence Drift?" You mentioned silence earlier.
Yes.
I've been meaning to ask you, where did you come up with that?
But you see, I talk about silence. That is, it can be so strong, the silence. And
But that title, "Where Does the Silence
well,
Drift?"
it came because I'm always been very quiet person. Not now, but all my youth, I was super quiet, very silent. I had fun and I laughed a lot, but I was very silent. And it's something I like to express in my painting.
yes. I wake up in the morning yearning
You're,
yearning
yeah, yearning.
to express something.
Oh, yes,
Or you
I
have to
wake
search
up.
around for a while.
No, I wake. Sometimes my bingos are when I wake up.
Your what?
Bingo.
Bingo.
Yeah, the bingo. Oh, yeah.
I
The light goes on.
Yeah, what inspires me a lot is when we travel, and I sketch a little bit, take pictures like the Basque country. That painting, Richard was upset and said, why is such a small window? You cannot see the countryside. But
Yeah,
To make this painting here.
to what?
This one, how many hours of silence? Because
Oh,
it's
yeah.
very silent
Yes.
painting. You should have worked a long time for this painting.
Yeah, that painting took a long time because it had 2 lives. 6, 7 years ago, and it was in my studio, and I kept talking to me, that painting. I said, you must do something with me. And then I realized that I didn't like the background. So the background was black. So it was very somber. And one day, waking up, I said, I'm going to work on the background. And then I had to redo the whole painting because the colors, they
Yes.
communicate with each other, so it didn't work. So it's like I redid it.
I love
Yeah.
Italian painting, and the color of the sky changes depending on where you are.
The light.
Exactly, the luminosity that you get. So, if to me, switching locations would mean something to
And
my
you're
art.
right, the sun, the sky, the colors
It changes
change.
so much.
And I have to admit that is one of my nightmares.
Really?
I have a hard time because there's, you see, variation of blues, but if you go to the ceruleans and they have
You're
some
right.
green and they're acidos.
Yeah, acid. You're right.
Yes. And then if you go to the ultramar or their other beautiful blues, then they turn into violet.
Right.
And then I'm always struggling. I'm painting right now a portrait, and it's in Acapulco. And I said, this sky is not Acapulco. The sky is in the Mediterranean. So I have to finish to change the blue of the sky.
On the way you show the color, I don't know, something is strong.
Oh, well, that's good to know.
Yes.
You
Fantastic.
I think your color palette has rubbed off on your daughter. They have a lot of these colors in their apartment.
really?
Yeah, plain that's all I do.
Oh, yeah, I miss her.
You still go hunting for boxes?
Oh, I'm always looking for boxes.
Yes.
I know where to get those.
You know, some of the ones I get in Mexico, they are mostly to weight grain. And it's the Spaniards, when they come during the colony, they impose their decimal and the weight,
Right.
whatever the kilos, and so they fabricated these boxes even with seals of agriculture,
That's great.
which I sold those
Right.
pieces. What an idiot! Instead of keeping them,
Yeah.
because they have an amazing value, you know. Because now people, you buy them in the antique stores, and sometimes in the market, I have done it and I felt like terrible. Go to the woman that's selling the beans, and I said, please, would you sell me your almud, your cuartillo?
Yeah.
I said, oh no, it was my father's. And I said, well, what if I pay you, I pay you, you can make a new one. I did once, and I feel so bad. And I said, and I convinced her I pay even 3 times more, like you keep some money for yourself. He says, well, okay, this is too old. And I went back home very happy, but then sad, because
Right.
you know, you break the tradition that they pass it from family to family. But such is
right.
life.
I don't know you call it like books, secrets in the books. I love those.
And
Those
this,
are very-
I started experimenting with,
something
you know,
is
folding
going
the,
on. You open this thing,
Oh, and here.
Yeah.
in the heart of the book, like this.
yeah,
Beautiful.
Yeah, Anamario,
I love those shoes. I know I should be looking at
I-
the paintings, but the shoes are
and
great.
they great.
Actually, I think I know which one, but
They
I
forgot.
Yeah, I love them.